Hello there, my name's Andy Nicol and I'm the course tutor for the C1 or advanced course for Perfectly Spoken. For those of you more familiar with the IELTS scale, this is levels 7 to 8 in IELTS. And in this, the first lesson of the course, I'm going to be looking at the subject of discourse markers. Discourse markers then, in this first lesson, we're going to be doing the following. We'll be looking at different functions of discourse markers. This particular subset of discourse markers we're looking at today is linking words. There are other kinds of discourse markers like adverbs, which we will be looking at in lesson 3. We'll also be focusing on word order. In other words, where do these particular words or expressions go in the sentence? Do they come at the start? Do they come at the middle and link different clauses together, and so on? We'll also be looking at register. This is fantastically important because obviously if you are writing a formal piece of writing, perhaps an academic essay or something, you need to know which are the most appropriate ones to use, and others which are less informal, perhaps used in speech and so on. And then we're going to do some practice, choosing the most appropriate linking words, either in terms of meaning or in terms of register and so on. Okay? So, functions of discourse markers then. First of all, we need to ask ourselves, what is a discourse marker? The British Council very handily have given us this definition. From their website, discourse markers are words and phrases which are used in both speaking and writing to signpost discourse. This simply means that they indicate what you're going to talk about. So they do this by showing terms, joining ideas together, showing attitude, how we feel about something, and generally controlling communication. So today we're going to look at linkers, as I mentioned. And so first of all, here we have a table, and there are a number of discourse markers in the table, and we want to decide what is the function of each of these discourse markers. Okay, so I've got 4 categories. The first category is result. The second, reason, why something happened. To express a purpose, why you did something. For example, I went to the supermarket to buy some bread. And then contrast, two contrasting ideas joined together. So the first linking word I want to look at is so. Where do you think so should go? You can pause your recording now if you want time to think about it. So is a result. Okay, the next one is because, as, and since. Where should they go? Again, pause if you want time to think. And they represent reason. Okay, I bought a new car because my old one wasn't working properly or kept breaking down and so on. The next one is to, in order to, and so as to. Again, pause if you need time to think. And these express a purpose. As I mentioned in the example before, I went to the supermarket to buy some bread. That is the purpose for my visit to the supermarket. In order to, so as to express the same thing. We'll be looking at differences in register and so on later. Okay, because of. Where would because of go? Again, that expresses a reason. Then we've got therefore and consequently. Again, pause if you need time to think. They express a result. They're similar in meaning to so, however, they're a bit more formal. Again, we'll be looking at the register later. However, where do you think however goes? Any ideas? Yes, indeed. However represents contrast. In case, this is an interesting word. Where does in case go? It expresses a purpose. I took an umbrella in case it rained later on, or I took some money with me in case of emergency. Okay, although, even though, and though, where would they go? Pause if you need time to think. They express a contrast. They go in the middle of the sentence linking two clauses together, or sometimes they can come at the beginning of a sentence too. Even though is more emphatic than the others. Due to, owing to, they express a reason. They're quite formal expressions. Again, we'll look at this later. As a result, not surprisingly, this represents a result. In spite of and despite. Any ideas? I'm going to disappear for a second so you can see this on the better. They represent a contrast. Nevertheless, also contrast, and then finally but or yet, again contrast. But obviously is the most common linking word that we use when we are talking when we're talking in informal speech and so on. But is a very common linking word that we use. Okay, so I'm going to move on now to choosing the right linker. So here we've got some examples of sentences, and I'd like you to choose the most appropriate linker. In this case, we're focusing on meaning rather than register. So let's have a look at the first one. The example: it was snowing heavily all morning. As a result, or due to, the motorway was closed for all traffic. Well, the motorway was closed for all traffic is a consequence, a result of the heavy snow, so we have to use a result one. So as a result is the correct answer. Due to expressed as a reason, and it didn't snow heavily because of the traffic, so this is not the reason. Okay, so let's have a look at the first one. Can you turn down the music so that, or in case, I can hear what your father's saying? Okay, if you want to pause to think, pause the recording now. And the answer is so that I can hear what your father's saying. It's purpose. The government has declared the election illegal. Nevertheless, or as a result, most people still intend to vote. Which of the linking words do you think is most appropriate here? Well, of course, this is a contrast. On the one hand, the government has declared the election illegal. On the other, people intend to vote. There's a contrast here, so nevertheless is the correct one. I'll disappear again so that you can see the next one. We can't go on holiday to Australia this year. Is it as we can't afford it, or so we can't afford it? Well, the reason we can't go on holiday to Australia this year is because we don't have enough money. So it's a reason, and the answer is therefore as. And the last one. He got back in time for his favourite TV programme. Is it due to or in spite of the fact that the train was late? Well, he got back in time is a contrast to the fact that the train was late. So the answer is in spite of the fact the train was late. Okay, how did you get on with those? I hope you didn't find them too challenging. So let's move on now and look at some of these linking expressions in a bit more detail. Okay, so we're going to look at word order and register now. So first of all, let's look at the expressions that talk about result. Okay? If you can remember what they are. So is normally found within a sentence linking two clauses together. As a result, therefore, and consequently are often used at the beginning of a sentence. So if we take an example, I didn't have enough money, so I decided to stay at home. Okay, I didn't have enough money, I decided to stay at home, are two clauses within the sentence, so links them within the sentence. Okay, now looking at reason. Because, as, and since are used to introduce clauses of reason, that means with a verb, a subject, a verb, etc. As and since are often found at the beginning of a sentence. For example, as it was his first day at school, he didn't know anyone. Because of, due to, and owing to also express reason, and they're usually followed by a noun or noun phrase, a gerund, or the fact that. Let's see this better. The match was postponed due to the rain, or owing to the rain, or due to the fact that it was raining, or because of the rain, etc. Okay, so now we're going to have a look at some sentences and see if we can choose the correct linking words for each one. Okay, so here we go. Sorry, some images I should say, and see if we can link them together with the correct linking expressions. Okay, so you've got a picture of some heavy snow. It's snowing heavily, heavy snowfall, and a picture of a woman who's obviously not going out. She's staying in the house. So how could we link these two images together? Have a think, pause, and think about this if you wish. So here are some examples that I've decided. It was snowing heavily, so I decided to stay at home. As the result, the consequence. I decided to stay at home because, or as, it was snowing heavily. This is putting the reason at the end. I decided to stay at home because of the heavy snow. Remember, because of is followed by a noun phrase and so on. Or because of the fact that it was snowing heavily is another possibility, and so on. Okay, well done if you chose one of these options or something similar. Okay, so let's move on now and have a look at some sentences. We're looking now at purpose. To, in order to, and so as to introduce a clause of purpose, and they're followed by an infinitive. For example, I decided to study with perfectly spoken in order to improve my English, or so as to improve my English, or simply to improve my English. Okay, all of these are possible. We use in case plus a clause to indicate that we did something as a precaution against a potential difficulty. For example, I brought some, sorry, I'll just get rid of myself here. I brought some extra cash with me in case of emergency. You go on holiday, you're worried that you might encounter some problem, you might run out of money, etc. So you brought some extra cash with you in case of an emergency. Okay, so again, I'd like you to link the following pictures. So you've got a brother and sister in the car. Okay, they're going on a long trip with their parents, and you can see that they've got a tablet in the first picture. So why might they take the tablet? See if you can link the two pictures together. I'm going to disappear again so I can show you some examples. So pause the recording now if you need time to think. And here are my examples. We took the tablet in case the kids got bored. Or we took the tablet, and this time we're expressing a purpose, to entertain the kids, or to keep the kids entertained, or to keep the kids happy. We took the tablet so as to entertain the kids, and so on. Okay, so now we're going to look at word order and register, and this time we're going to look at contrast. Okay, so expressions which or words which express a contrast. Obviously, the most common one is but, one that most of you will be familiar with. And again, this is usually found linking two clauses together within a sentence. Example, I enjoyed the special effects. You've gone to the cinema to see a new movie, I don't know, the new Marvel movie or whatever, but the acting was dreadful. Okay, so this is a contrast. Great special effects, terrible acting. Enjoyed the special effects, but the acting was dreadful. We can also use yet in a similar way. It's a more formal, in fact more literary expression. You might find this a lot in period writing, Charles Dickens or something like that. You'll find it a lot. It's the same meaning as but. Sorry, I'll disappear again here. However, nevertheless are normally found at the start of a sentence. Example, I brought some extra cash with me in case, oh sorry, that's the wrong example. So I'm just going to move on. Okay, sorry about that. And then I want to look at some more expressions of contrast. Although, though, and even though are synonymous, even though is more emphatic than the others. Okay, so if we want to make it stronger, we can use even though. I had a good time, even though your sister wouldn't stop talking. Again, you could use although or though here, but using even though makes it more emphatic. Your sister, she talks so much. I had a great time at the party, even though your sister wouldn't stop talking. In spite of and despite are also used for contrast. They are followed by three different structures, by a gerund, a noun, or the fact that. So we can see here, despite the fact they're identical twins, they have nothing in common. Despite being identical twins, they have nothing in common, if you use a gerund. Or we can also use a noun after despite and spite of. In spite of, despite are exactly the same. Okay? So now I'd like to look at, again, a couple of images and see if you can link them together. So here we are, two images this time of a man with a very high-tech, attractive camera, and obviously lots of money. Obviously the camera wasn't cheap. So pause the recording now and have a think. How could you link these two images together? And here are my examples. He bought the camera even though, although, or though it was really expensive. Despite being very expensive, he bought the camera. The camera was really expensive, however, he decided to buy it anyway. Remember, despite, you could use despite the fact that it was very expensive, he bought the camera, and so on. Okay, lots of different ways that you can connect them. Okay, so here we've got some sentences, and I'd like you to try to join these together. Obviously, pause the recording after each one if you need some time to think. Okay, so the first one, take your umbrella with you, it might rain. There's a possibility of rain. would be, pause here if you need time to think. Take your umbrella with you in case it rains. It was raining, we played football. We want to use the expression in spite. Pause the recording. And you could link it in the following way. We played football in spite of the rain, or in spite of the rain we played football, or we played football in spite of the fact that it was raining, and so on. Plenty of options there. Number 3, I hid the Christmas presents in my wardrobe. I didn't want the children to find them. So again, pause here if you want time to think about this. And here are some possibilities. I didn't want the children to find the Christmas presents, so I hid them in my wardrobe. And so on. Okay, and then lastly, again, I'm going to disappear here so you can see. He's 90 years old. He goes for a run every morning using even though. Again, pause the recording here if you need time to think. And here's one possibility. Even though he's 90 years old, he goes for a run every morning. Okay, so that was meaning. And I want to look now at register. As I said, some of these expressions have similar meanings, but some are more formal than others. Okay, so from the context of these sentences, try to choose what would be the most appropriate word or expression in each one. Okay, so let's take the first one. As an example, profits for the first quarter of the year have risen. Is this formal or informal? Well, to me it sounds very formal. So the best option would be, therefore, the company will be hiring more employees. So let's look at example 1. I'm feeling really tired these days because of or owing to the long hours I've been working. Okay, so it sounds as if someone's speaking. Speaking is always quite informal. Which one do you think is correct? Pause if you need time to think. And the answer is because of. Yes, owing to sounds too formal in this context. Okay, number 2. I really like their music. I bought their latest album. Is so or therefore. Again, do you think it's formal or informal? Pause if you need time to think. Well, I would suggest that it's informal, and so would be more appropriate here. Okay, therefore sounds too formal. The next one, I popped into the supermarket. Popped in is a phrasal verb, but that should give it away in terms of the level of formality. Is it to or in order to buy some milk? Well, phrasal verbs are very informal. This is somebody talking, obviously. To buy some milk. Okay, and now I'm going to disappear for the last one so you can see it clearly. It has been confirmed that all matches at Wimbledon have been postponed. Blah, blah, blah. The heavy rain. Is it due to? Because of. Well, this is an announcement at Wimbledon. Quite a formal setting, formal context. I would suggest that due to would be most appropriate here, as it's quite formal. Okay, so again, I'm going to give you a couple of images now to try to link and see how you get on with these. Okay, so there's these 2 pictures of the lady. She's gone to the supermarket. You can see some fruit there next to her. Try to link these images together, and I'm actually going to set this as a little task for you. You can see the fruit there, the arrow's pointing at it. Try to link those 2 questions in as many ways as you can as possible, and I'll give you some suggestions in the next or after the next lesson. Okay, so that's all on the subject of discourse markers for today. I'm going to now tell you about the next lesson in the series. The next lesson is going to be a vocabulary lesson, and we're going to be looking at the subject of money. Obviously a subject people talk about all the time, very important to people and dear to people's hearts, the subject of money. So we'll be looking at lots of useful expressions in terms of money. We'll be looking at things such as different words, synonyms for poor, rich, and mean. We'll be looking at idiomatic expressions and other expressions to do with money. He's made of money. Money doesn't grow on trees. Money is the root of all evil, and so on. And we'll also be looking at financial terminology, loans, mortgages, deposits, and so on. So this will be a very valuable lesson for everyone, I think. So please do tune in to the next lesson on the vocabulary of money. Thanks for listening, and see you soon. Bye-bye.